Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Africa iShare podcast. It has been a long while since we recorded something, but all is well, and I thought let's do a recap of some of the things that I've come across through the year. This is 16th of December 2022. We did a few episodes at the beginning of the year, and somewhere in the middle then we took a break, but from beginning of next year we should be able to do it more on a regular basis. But we're also writing on our website africaishare.com, so just in case someone wants to keep up to date with what we've been doing, you can see it on our website and on our LinkedIn page. So today I will speak about doing business in Africa and some challenges that I have personally faced about doing business in Africa, and then also give some updates on what has been happening in terms of like different policies that African countries have been getting into, and generally about trade within Africa. My name is Christine, and I'm the host of the Africa Share podcast. Different co-hosts come, but today it's just me. So, beginning with doing business in Africa, and I will say this based on a previous discussion that we've had here on Africa iShare about a platform that was being founded mainly within East Africa and largely within Kenya. It's called Mekwangu, and that's spelled as Mechwangu. And the experience I've had with that platform, because I was quite involved in it, was that the idea is good. It's awesome because what it does is it brings together mechanics from different parts of, let's say, within Kenya. And then if someone is stuck on the road, then they are able to, based on their location, they are able to look for a mechanic near them for the specific type of car, and then a nominal fee is charged. But the right now on the platform, over close to 3,000 mechanics are registered, but the uptake by car owners is not the best, I would say, since the launch of the platform. And that got me thinking. This is advice I think many entrepreneurs within Africa need to know, even if it's something within tech, even if it's even social media. It's difficult to get to break through into the market. So the fact that you have an excellent idea in and of itself does not mean that the idea will succeed in the market. That's one. Or secondly, that it will have a quick uptake. So there's more work that's needed. There's more strategy, re-strategizing, coming up with different ways of adoption. And like in that case, you try and get market feedback. Even that market feedback, um, you implement it, but it doesn't mean that the idea will pick up immediately. And that got me thinking that there are obvious challenges that exist to doing business within African countries, to being an entrepreneur, especially as a startup within Africa. One is funding. It is very demanding financially to fund even a tech startup like that uh, from scratch, and maybe go for several years without turning a profit, or even leave alone a profit, getting enough income coming to the business. Because, like in that case, as I've said, so much money has been spent in like getting like the mechanics onto the platform. But to be able to break into the market and actually get car owners into it, there's so much advertising that's required, so much, which means funding. And there's been startups that I've noticed where for them, I think they have someone to bankroll them, which makes it easier because it's almost like you need to have almost like a really bottomless source of funds which are guaranteed and which the investors do not require a return within a short time. Like for this one, if because we are investors, if an investor only has like a short amount of time that they want a return for the investment, you will not make it. Like starting is for such a startup, and which is a big characteristic of like people who are investors within the African market. You'll find that after, especially after the inflation and after like the high prices in fuel and all those things, the amount of money that someone is able to spare for investment cannot be sunk into a business that does not turn a profit for 5 years. It just doesn't make sense. So you find that most of the people who are investing will be investing very short term, quick turnaround, and quick to recover investments. So that's why you hear someone consider something like betting as an investment. Like because I'll place a bet, of course, my just being as an investment, there's higher risk. I could win or I could lose, but people prefer that. People prefer that over getting an idea which requires time, effort, and money to work, because one of the time, and also like how can you guarantee this return within a specific period of time? So that brings to mind like maybe some things that someone can consider about funding of like young startups within Africa. One is like the current investors, the small investors, family, friends, and maybe people with a few, like some small savings. Are these the best people to approach to be investors? I, depending on what your business is, that may not be the case. Other because, as I've said, the return that people are looking for should be very quick. Again, because the inflation rates, the prices of the cost of living is really skyrocketing and has been skyrocketing over 2022 because of the different factors at play in the global economy. But then I've also thought and spoken about this in the past about something like maybe crowdfunding for like small entrepreneurs. But even that, the key is that these investors want a return within a short period of time. And again, what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter whether it's a few investors or a crowd that's investing. For most within Africa, is that they will require a return within a short term. Personally, I will not invest into something that someone will tell me I need to tie down my investment for like a period of 5 years to get a return where I could have invested in something more short term and get the same amount of return. If it's a business, the profits are not going to be extraordinary. If you find like a business that's already a going concern, a business that's already that's already making profits today, it does not make sense for me to fail to invest in it today and be guaranteed a return within a year, and instead choose like a startup which will take me 5 years to realize the same kind of profits that I would have realized in a year. So that's the point. So when it comes to doing business in Africa, it's difficult, and in fact, I think that's what is the learning point, and for at least as far as doing business is concerned for this year. And I think that will actually even be the title of this podcast. It's difficult to do business in Africa. And I've noted that, like for different African countries, if you find that there is a tech business that has really taken off, you'll find that behind the funding, maybe there's the government, because of course the government can lend huge, huge, huge sums and not have a quick expectation of a return. But even then, because of like the many loans that most African countries have had to incur on mainly infrastructure development with Chinese businesses, you find that there's not so much a proper a physical policy in a country should be able to invest in small businesses. But like for instance, in Kenya, where I live right now, there are different types of funds which have been set up to help businesses. More recently, one called the Asla Fund. But even it, you get a loan, but the period of repayment is not 5 years that you need to like have a successful online business or a successful tech business. The thing I'm saying is that especially within tech in Africa, there's so much potential, but the people who I think will end up like getting the fruit of the investments within Africa are unlikely to be African entrepreneurs. This is unless it's like like the people who are already in the market and they have established businesses. So this is like maybe in the finance sector, if like a bank decides to go into fintech, then because they already have funds, they can bankroll the tech business so that they can take off. The same with like telecoms, those they are able to like really go into that sector. That's why I think the markets that exist within Africa for tech, most of them will be exploited, but I think it will be mainly by either already existing tech companies, like Alphabet and Meta, all those. They're the ones to exploit and fill the gaps that exist, or like subdivisions of those businesses. And that's quite interesting because today I thought it interesting watching someone explain how they're developing an app that they wanted to launch in South Africa. And this is an American person who, because they have one, they are funds, yeah, they can finance the period of time that the app will get into the South African market. And then I realized is that it's not that the idea is any different or more brilliant than a South African person can come up with. It really is not. It is something that someone actually sitting in South Africa needs. And it's something that someone looks at and says, yeah, actually, this is something that could work. But again, the key is that just because it's a good idea and it could work, it won't fly if you don't have the funds for it. And I think the advice that has been given again and again is that are you trying to start a business? Then look what gap exists in the market and then look for a way to fill that gap. That's good advice, but the taking off of that good idea, like the practicability of it, is funds, and those funds must be laid out for the long term, and it's also the effort that's involved. So there's, I think, getting into that world of investing in startups has really had my eyes open. And again, speaking also of even things like social media. So once someone was telling me to even create content and become like an influencer, by the time you're getting there, you require so much to have put in so much effort. Of course, there's depending on which angle or approach you want to take, it actually does require effort. Like in developed countries, someone like spending time and effort in creating content, let's say on TikTok, looks a bit different from someone doing the same in Africa. One, there's the fact that the person who is doing that, let's say in the UK, uh, one, they possibly can work part time, or they have means to like make a living, and they can spare time to like create content by, I don't know, making music or something of that kind. In Africa, the situation is a bit different. When you think about it, someone who's trying to create content and become an influencer, for most of them, that's like how they want to earn a living. Meaning that if today what I've managed to do is create, I don't know, play my guitar and come up with a song and really sound amazing and I'm talented. First is the cost of me buying the guitar, which unless I have money already or someone to help me get a start at it, then it means that I'll not even be at the point where I'll be having the guitar to make the music with. So you find that you either have your options are you either work, which and not just part-time work, because again, what how much are you paid in part-time work in within most African countries, and also how many sectors are there that will support like that many people who want to be influencers and who want to work part-time. So again, I think these are thoughts that someone who is like looking, how what approach do I take in life? There's advice that's given that sounds easy, but the when you go to actualize it, it's actually not the easiest thing that there is to do out there. And so that's about business. And then some recap of some things that have been happening this week. The US was hosting like the heads of state for African countries, at least for a majority of the African countries, because it was through the Africa Union, and some countries have been banned from the Africa Union because of things like uh, different civil wars or uh, coups or you know different things. So some African countries were not invited, and it was interesting again because what the US is trying to do is to have that angle of like cooperating with African countries for, of course, trade and business and economic purposes. And this is no surprise because China has really like had cooperation and friendships within Africa and with African countries to the extent that slowly China is like becoming the economic partner, the main economic partner with African countries. And it was quite interesting to see the angle that was taken there. One, it was the person who was like speaking or making comments at that point was very strategically chosen to be like the person I'm specifically speaking about was a black, an African American. And it was, and the remarks they were making were of the kind that, like if African Americans are making it here, why aren't you Africans making it back in Africa? Those comments, well, quite interesting take, but there's just so much misguided in that statement. It's not the same, it's not the same if you ask me for a black person living in France and a black person living in a small village in Botswana. It's not the same. First, because of the economic setup or how things operate in the two countries. It's not the same for like an African person living in Djibouti. It's not the same with an African American. It's not the same. So the wonder that someone could be making it in the US and they're black and you're not making it as a black person in Africa, I think, I don't know, just doesn't come off as very well informed of the actual circumstances that happen. Like, for instance, what I was speaking about business opportunities, part time work, and all that. So, this has been a short podcast, and it's to thank everyone who has been listening to us, who listens to us, and who follows Africa iShare podcast and Africa iShare discussions. So, the platform was started in 2020, and the idea was to get more African content and real African, conversations going amongst people of different African countries. And this year, 2022, as I already said, not much really of podcast has been recorded, but we'll be back at it in the new year. And thank you so much. And Please follow us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, listen to the podcast, and also share your ideas so that you know what we are doing and if it's impactful. Thank you very much and good day.